Bam, welcome back to the Halving Report Podcast with myself, your host, Brad Mines. We are on episode 55. The price of Bitcoin is about 48,000 US dollars as of Friday, December 10th at 5 p.m. There are 2 years and 123 days left until the next Bitcoin halving. Bitcoin hash rate has reached new all-time highs. For a proof of work cryptocurrency like Bitcoin, hash rate is used to measure the total computational power being used to process transactions and to mine new coins. After China kicked out miners earlier this year, hash rate plummeted, and it's wild to see the robustness in the network as hash rate rises once again. I'm still very hopeful to see Bitcoin and cryptocurrency prices to follow in December and going into next year. Today, we welcome Phil Demers to the show. You may know Phil from the documentary The Walrus and the Whistleblower, which describes Phil as a part-time mailman, ex-trainer at Marineland, the iconic amusement park here in Niagara, Ontario. Phil is known as Walrus Whisperer on Twitter with over 35,000 followers to date. He appeared on Joe Rogan 5 times, testified before the Canadian Senate, is being sued for $1.5 million for plotting to steal Smooshi the Walrus. His story is about cost and courage of speaking out when you have nothing to lose. Phil is from my hometown, Welland, and is a colleague of mine. I really love Phil's story, and I think it's important for people to know that Phil is a really big believer in Bitcoin and decentralization. It's also interesting to see how Bitcoin can be used as a tool of freedom for whistleblowers around the world who face censorship by unethical, big money interests such as Marineland. Oftentimes, Phil's love for Bitcoin is drowned out by his struggle with Marineland. So here we are today to talk everything Bitcoin with Phil Demers. Let's get to it. Phil, it's good to see you. I appreciate your time. Thanks for coming on to the Halving Report.
Brad, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
So you're a popular guy in the area. You're a well-known name in the Niagara region, of course, and a lot of my listeners are from the area. But just maybe so for the crypto nerds and freaks on the outer edges of the internet, maybe you can give us a brief introduction for yourself and a little bit about your struggle.
Certainly. So I am a former employee of a place called Marineland of Canada, which, if you don't know today, is a now notoriously known zoo for their for their animal cruelty, and largely much of it is based on my revelations over the past decade, and especially when I quit. And so the consequence of my quitting and speaking to the media was Marineland in 2012 elected to sue me with the SLAPP suit, which is an acronym, SLAPP, which means Strategic Lawsuit Against Public Participation, in the hopes that they would complicate my life with a very long, arduous, and expensive legal battle, unlikely to be sustained by by generally any person against the likes of a powerful corporation. But also an attempt to curb public conversation. So as you know, whereas suddenly politics are delving into the topic of animal care, animal cruelty laws, or the lack thereof, and then suddenly a lot of attention on Marineland would become. So they just believed that, and at the time it was an effective strategy. Unfortunately for them, 2012 was an interesting time in both technological advances and be it paradigm shifts in media and how media works, and the advent of or rather just social media's sort of uprising and whatnot. And so I had the great blessing and I suppose forethought of really aggressively pursuing avenues outside of mainstream media to propel my message. And I was lucky enough because at the time, imagine in 2012, there was much corporate friendly media. And so the message was tailored and mitigated for Marineland. So I very rarely had many of my points of view actually touched on, except for often at the bottom of the article, and sometimes even taken out of context so as to help Marineland. So I learned in 2012 that if I'm going to do this and sustain this in any way, shape, or form, or sustain the impossible, it's going to have to be done differently. And that's when, again, I discovered sort of social media and podcasting. This is where my life started to change for the most part, because I had the blessing of getting the attention of Joe Rogan back in early 2013, early in my journey. And that just changed everything. That meeting just changed everything. I got to have large, long form conversations where I was able to express myself very clearly, and people got to know who the person that Marineland was otherwise attacking the character of, who rarely had an opportunity to defend himself, right? Mm-hmm. And here we are now, fast approaching my trial date of of October 3rd, 2022, which is nearly a year away, but as is the long journey that this is. Marineland turns out they messed with the wrong guy. So I guess if I have to introduce myself, I'm the wrong guy for Marineland to have messed with.
And you briefly touched on it, but you were very influential in a bill that was passed here in Canada. Do you mind just briefly touching upon that as well?
Happy to. So, as a consequence, I suppose, to Marineland of much of my and others' revelations and our relentless pursuit for justice and truth, there was many both provincial animal cruelty laws that have changed. Standards of care for marine mammals in captivity were created. A number of things, but most importantly came the passing of a bill called Bill S-203, which is a ban on the keeping of marine mammals, or rather dolphin, porpoises, and whales in captivity. And we passed that law a number of years ago, and here we are. And as way of breaking news, Marineland is currently being investigated on account of a breach of one of these sections of that law, which is a performance ban, which Marineland, we've made it illegal for both the holding of, or rather the keeping of animals, or rather whales, dolphins, and porpoises in captivity. So the breeding, export, import, but again, with property laws, they supersede that of new laws. So Marineland is able to keep their animals in captivity, grandfathered in and protected from that aspect of the law, but they were not absolved of the performance ban aspect of the law, which they're clearly in breach of. So endorsing, encouraging, and then having animals encouraging as in advertising to invite people to come to the performance is one aspect, which is actually illegal, and the other is the actual performance. And Marineland it turns out the police are investigating Marineland for such a breach. My guess is by the time this gets published, maybe they'll be charged with animal cruelty. Maybe.
And I was rewatching your documentary again, and I think it was Elizabeth May that mentioned, some of the political or senators were in the pockets of Marineland. Was there a certain party that all those folks belong to? Who are these folks? And is it well known now? Have they been paid off directly, or?
So it's funny you touch on something. So there was an actual complaint made, a lobby complaint, because Marineland had been illegally, I'm putting this in quotes because at this point there's not been any actual formal charge of the sort, but there could be a little question of, but Marineland was not actually registered as a lobby, and you have to register as a lobby in order to have these private conversations and to try to influence. Now, Marineland just decided to just sponsor, or I can't speak exactly to what arrangements were made, but there was a conservative senator by the name of Don Plett, who was just an absolute, he was a bit of a nightmare through the entirety of this process. He has a lot of influence and sway in the Senate. And it was just a big ugly mess. But unfortunately for both the system itself, which by design should have kept a law like what we just passed at Bay, the will of the people just made it such that every attempt he made to kill, and there were multiple over many years to kill the bill, failed. And so today I'm very happy to remind him that he can kiss my ass.
And just the current status, you said that your trial date has been set for October of 2022. Maybe
correct.
Just touch upon your current status with Marineland and where you're at in the process.
Well, right now I'm waiting for a bill for November's work, which included our pre-trial. So again, I'm battling against a children's story, a rumor, a fiction story that is without evidence, without witnesses, without receipts of losses, without anything. A 10-year battle against a bad rumor started by Marineland, of which they themselves can't even produce, again, any evidence or anything of the sort. So nonetheless, waiting for what could round my... I'm interested to see what the tally of this year of my legal bills, because it's certainly a jaw dropper, but I'm expecting something in the form of 5 digits for sure. So I'm waiting on that. And when that's said and done, I mean, frankly, it's a waiting game. It's a question of what becomes in terms of preparation for trial. But again, because anyone who knows anything about courts and law, this is not something that's going to trial. I mean, Marineland, they themselves had tried to tell me that years ago, tried to say, yo, this is never going to trial. You're signing this piece of paper and that's it. And I kept saying, no, I'm not. No, I'm not. And here we are. So what becomes and what is a mystery to everyone. Beyond the legal problems, Marineland is rumored to be about to be charged with, of course, that law that I helped create and pass. So that's welcome information. There's a lot of rumor that Marineland is currently considering various options as they seem for sale in a desperate attempt to unavail themselves to the pending financial ruin of their legacy. So there's a lot going on, man. It really is a crazy movie. And you touched on the fact that there's a documentary entitled The Walrus and the Whistleblower out that people are able to watch now. I'm looking forward to what Walrus and the Whistleblower 2 would be, because that's where we are. It's where we are.
Now, shifting gears a little bit, I see you talk on Twitter sometimes about Bitcoin, but your main focus is, of course, Marineland and your struggle with them. Is it well known that you're a Bitcoiner? I know that you're a big Bitcoiner, but do people know that? Or like what's your status on that? Is it well known? And maybe how did you get into Bitcoin?
So I would say that because I have a brand to manage, I generally don't wade too much into the Bitcoin, into crypto Twitter and whatnot. It's not necessarily just yet the part of my life that I'm ready to dive headfirst in. But have I been involved in the Bitcoin in the Bitcoin community for some time? Yes, I started buying Bitcoin in 2017. Long story short, my grandmother passed away sometime before, and she left me, a small inheritance. But nonetheless, as a consequence of my legal struggle, it was best for that money to perhaps stay in my father's possession for some time. At least that's what I thought at the time. So I won't have it. He sat on it for a few years. When it came time that I was desperately needing it, I said, hey, I need that money. What's it worth now? It was the same. Well, there's something that wasn't the same, was the price of everything that I had hoped to buy with that money. So it was a very quick sort of lesson. And so you compound that with my being, with Marineland trying to try to silence me and by threat of bankruptcy, with all this level of political control that has sort of surrounded my life. Learning about Bitcoin at the time that I did is such that I actually have parallels to Bitcoin. I'm sort of immutable because I'm not sponsored by, for instance, one person or one organization. My thoughts, views, experiences are spoken unfiltered through exactly no influence of anyone else. I suppose you can say that in the world of animal rights, I am a sovereign individual, in that both animal rights activists love and hate me, and have good reason for both reasons, right? But again, I operate as just a simple sovereign individual supported by many. And by virtue of this, I just have this sort of I just have this parallel and this love for Bitcoin, and it drew me to it. So again, I've been in the community a long time. I did mention Bitcoin on the Joe Rogan podcast about a year ago. I hope people bought. Take a look at what the price was. If anyone's looking long, they will know that it would have been a wonderful investment, and still one that they should regret not having made, and should still consider that it's never too late. You should do this because you're going to do it forever. There's something called dollar cost averaging. Stop looking at the numbers. Bitcoin is divisible. Come on, people. Anyway, sorry.
No, I love it. You mentioned like some parallels between, being a whistleblower of Marineland, or just a whistleblower in general, actually, and some aspects of Bitcoin, such as the freedom and able to access it from anywhere, anybody, and inability to censor people. Can you touch upon the parallels? Do you see a parallel in that?
Oh, absolutely, I do. I mean, it's exactly it's the exact means that I operate. And beyond that now, now that I've sort of entered the space, it changes the way you sort of think about a lot of things. It changes your value system. In a lot of ways, it's changed the way I think, in that I see a different future. I see greater and more effective means based on an incentive-based system, and something that has more transparency. And so I'm seeing with Bitcoin the reinvention of all things that have anything to do with power and politics. And with that, I have to stress, I would include animal rights organizations, because many, I would say, operate under the guise of helping animals in certain capacities, but more so are there to protect their job security and earn themselves a fairly glamorous wage. And this is something that I think that the public may not know enough about, again, due to lack of transparency. And I see Bitcoin and the emerging technologies as something that can strip away the power of politics and actually turn and address the needs of animals with actual resources in a more acute, powerful, and quick way.
Now, some people have noticed you're into Bitcoin. You've been on a few crypto, or at least one or two crypto podcasts, if I'm not mistaken. You know, who have you spoken to, and what have you learned?
I've been on Anthony Pompliano's podcast, of course. Now that was before his new Better Business show. That was great conversation years ago. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, it was just pre-pandemic. And if I can touch on it even further, you and I were supposed to go together, perhaps to New York, to meet Pomp, because you being a crypto and Bitcoin enthusiast as well, and us in our at the time sort of early friendship. It was just and our kindredship with the topic, it would have made for a great trip. So I shared with you in the disappointment that we weren't able to go. Of course, it's nice to see you rocking a podcast and doing and ever growing your brand as well, as you should be. But and beyond that, so and then this one I will now have done, which would be my third. The other one I did was the Funky Crypto podcast with Ben Askren, and of course Jay Wills wasn't there, but John Kim was there. I do want to mention I did give a January. It was late January, if I'm not mistaken, of this year that I was on there, so almost a year ago. And they asked me for a price prediction of Bitcoin, and I very conservatively said $70,000. And I got to say, between Ben and John, they were both sorely disappointed in my bearishness. And I kept saying, look, guys, I just look at charts and I look at projection of charts, and I'm like, I like elation. I like fantasy as well. But I mean, I'd like to think that Earth and reality are still just a bit different than some of these projections. So I thought I'd throw out something pretty conservative, and here we are on the cusp of, and even my projection would be something. And I've been looking forward to the day that I could find out if I was right. And I keep hoping for some pretty big godlike candles at this point.
When did you make that prediction? When was that?
So I'm guessing mid to late January. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Now, you've been on a couple really popular crypto podcasts, but obviously most notably Joe Rogan, Mike Tyson. What's it like sitting down with Joe Rogan in Texas, LA, wherever you were at the time? Like, is it pretty, being you and I both being from Welland, we work together locally here. Like, what's it like sitting down with these guys? So
there's a for sure novelty of it. Mm-hmm. Those guys, I have to say, make it a little easier, because it helps that I'm not just solely a fan, if you will, because of course I was a fan of these guys long before. I mean, I still live on this planet just like anyone else. I've grown up on this planet like anyone else. I know who Mike Tyson is, right? So, but it does help that they do make it easy, because I do have a topic of interest, and we're mutually beneficial to each other to interact. So it's great. I have been blessed with, in the case of Joe, that it's sort of flourished into a friendship, right? I've been on now 5 times. I've had the blessings of going to multiple UFC events, and, see him at comedy shows and get to hang out with him, have dinner with him a couple of times. And so, yes, it is as surreal as you would hope it to be. And yes, the nerves and all the excitement are just as real as you would hope it to be. But again, I stress that along with the inordinate highs that I get to experience, they do come with the baggage of the significant lows. So the surreality of all the awesome stuff does come with just how dark and ugly this can get. So there's the opposite, which is the awe of the awesome and like sort of the awful lows that people rarely touch on, but they do make the highs worth it. So I have to say that there's a karmic balance of sorts. Mm-hmm. I'm being rewarded for having to eat a lot of shit.
Now, when you say that, do you just mean it's a long journey? It's a long journey where you have these highs and lows and lulls, and areas of time where you find it hard to keep pushing forward on your struggle?
So the way that I would explain it is I would best surmise it as a psychological journey, because it's always a question of will. But I have been in a state of fight or flight incessantly. I'm currently sweating bullets. Okay. And there's a level of anxiety that is just always there. And so I've always been my body's been in a state of, and my mind and everything have been in a state of fight or flight, which is like a condition that, it's triggered, it's a response. And so that's done some stuff, man. That's had some effect on me. I'm learning it now because, there's some bravado that you have to face everything with. And if there's anything that I'm guilty of, it's purporting to be far braver than I am. So I always sort of like, I'm a bravado guy. Look at me, brave, brave, brave. But it's really not. At the end of the day, I do have this soft shell, and I'm curled up in the fetal position when I do. Am I going to go broke? Is the system out to get me? And is there a way that they actually will? There are whistleblowers out there that should not be currently in jail or should not be persecuted for their revelations and such. I know I'm speaking up against a zoo, but for anyone in the area that knows, Marineland is very powerful. They've been in the back. They've had the politicians and the police and just about everyone in their back pockets for a long time. I mean, frankly, when you talk about legacy industry of yore, like of old, there's some levels of danger and in local and corruptions and stuff. So my revelations came at a time when I was ultimately protected because I was able to be protected by remaining visible. But something that I had done, be it 30 years ago, perhaps, this might have been a far uglier, more sinister ending. So I am always, over to an extent, looking over my shoulder, knowing that there's a lot of powerful people that would like for me to be silent, that government and police officers and everything else. So, it's arduous because eventually it weighs on you. It changes your reality. I'm a conscious person. I exercise critical thought, and I don't allow entirely myself to succumb to some of the challenges, but there are tested times. I'm definitely weathered. I like that, actually. I'm aged. I've aged like a fine wine, if you will. But it's funny because there's a part of me that's like I suffer from a sort of arrested development. I'm still a child inside in a lot of ways. Right? I still got a lot of energy, almost childlike. And so adulting for me sort of came at a crash course when everything went. When I sort of, the whole Marineland thing happened. So there's a level of adulting, and there's a level of feeling like a child a little bit just generally in my arrested development, in that, I don't know, I just want to stay young forever or something. I don't know what it is. And then there's the aspect that, now in wanting to develop and evolve into a functioning human in society and all these other things, I now have these odd challenges. Like leaving the home is strange for me. It's a different experience. Being in crowds is a different experience. Even trying to enjoy myself in things that used to be so easily enjoyed is just no longer. It's just sort of gone. And I assume that much of that is compounded by the Marineland effects and the long journey that we're talking about. And some of it is probably the reality of getting older and changing, both physiologically and your philosophy's changing and everything else, and the ever-changing world and how fucking ugly it is out there as we speak. So, so is it a long, arduous journey? Perhaps more acutely than most, but, I'm great at lamenting, but I feel for the people who suffer far more, who don't get that opportunity. Like I have had the benefit of getting a lot of attention for my struggles. So, maybe warranted, but I'm blessed with having a lot of opportunity to be able to create a lot of change from what came with it, and that has to do with the fact that I just never gave up. So yes, very long. The path, the journey of a whistleblower is one that is not as fun as we purport.
And how much does Bitcoin and cryptocurrency or one of the other influence you? Does that kind of give you a new sense of revitalization, energy?
Dude, I'm so happy you even touch on this. Yeah, because it really, Bitcoin brings me so much hope. It brings me so much joy. It is the silent protest, just in every which way. I'm opting out of the system, the very system that wants to mess with me. There are powerful influences that want me broke. And if they had their will, financially, my fiscal sovereignty would be gone. I would be at the mercy of a corporation. Imagine that, being not only just silenced, but also being fiscally responsible for fictional damages. But it doesn't matter. The process alone was such to have that I would have been absolutely bankrupted. I've had to raise in excess of $500 $1,000 to pay off bills for both myself and two other whistleblowers. So this journey, I mean, this is not something that any normal person, I've done the math. Over the 10 years of my having to do this, I would have had to basically make the equivalent of $100,000 a year and attribute every single solitary penny towards legal bills. It's just not feasible. It's not possible, right? So, you know, I'm just very lucky to have gotten as far as I am, and every which way, I feel that it's been Bitcoin that's been giving me a lot of hope. And let me tell you what's been happening in that I've watched my world change. So I'm a fiscally responsible person. I always have been. And that actually bit Marineland in the ass quite a lot, because, you know, I had some money. I had $50,000 in the bank when Marineland sued me because I won a reality TV show called Wipeout Canada. So I had this $50,000 check in the bank. What am I going to do with this? Well, I'll hold on to it for a rainy day. Well, that rainy day came, right?
You gonna tell us how you got that $50,000?
What's that, sorry?
You gonna tell us how you got that $50,000?
Yeah, I won Wipeout Canada. I won Wipeout Canada. I got to stand there next to get a big old check, that fun stuff.
And you met
a lot
Spandy
of years
there?
ago. And that's where I met Spandy.
Andy.
And Spandy really is the person that turned me on to Bitcoin. I should mention, like, we'd had a lot of conversations, and in 2017, he found a way to buy. He's actually living in Texas at the time. So for Americans, it was a lot easier to buy, and I was having a hard time. So he kind of guided me on how to buy it. And in 2017, it was a challenge. I was buying $150 max a week. You know, here I was trying to put this inheritance in there and try to outpace both the rising cost of Bitcoin, which at the time I thought it was going to $1 million in a month's time. So, you know, I'm in a frantic race. So, you know, I had the FOMO, I had it rich. So over and above the Marineland anxiety, suddenly I had FOMO too, dude. So anyways, you know, so I met Spandy and I won this money, and I got to use it. I got to use it to help defend against this lawsuit, at least to get me to a certain extent, to a certain point where suddenly I got enough attention to keep it sustained. And that's how it's happened, of course, with crowdfunding of the sort. But again, back to Bitcoin being my hope. I've actually, and I'm about to, for a third time at the age of 43, taking out our registered savings, and I'm willingly paying taxes on it. So I'm taking a net fairly significant loss on it, but I'm projecting to where the money is going to be. And I'm looking at inflation, and you know, I look at Jack Mallers and everything that he makes sense, and the way that he speaks with his passion. He talks about, you know, I want to own a home one day, and I got to make 20% year over year just to keep up with inflation and the rising cost of assets, such as rising costs of homes and properties and education and everything else. And, you know, so yeah, dude, in my mind, I'm completely changed. I'm all in for Bitcoin. It is my savings account. It is my retirement. It is my means that no one can touch me, right? It's my protection. It's my sovereign wealth. It is the only form of wealth that it turns out no one can take from me. You know, they can come and take my bicycle if they want my 2007 truck. There it is. The air conditioning doesn't work. Steal it in winter. But beyond that, no, it's Bitcoin is my greatest hope. It's my greatest hope for the future. In fact, again, just to touch on, whereas I have ideas in my mind for ways to fund projects in the future, much of it has to do with the fact that Bitcoin as a treasury itself, or as a holdings account, accrues interest and value over time. Well, I see that if enough people get behind individual projects, we can actually strip the power and politics of some organizations and suddenly create funds that perpetually fund animal organizations of the sort, but they do it in perpetuity while not losing the reserve currency, right? If the algorithm is such that the reserve currency always grows more than it produces in terms of support for animal organizations, and I use those as the example, then you've got something that is viable for life and forever, and is not reliant on one single solitary person. Suddenly the power and politics are out, the influences of single solitary people, be it the vulnerability. And I'll touch on 2003's Keiko's release. His funding sort of was dropped, and because there was sovereign individuals that were, for the most part, funding them, and they lost interest, or because of a tech crash, they lost their ability to continue to fund that project. Keiko was released, and the consequence of it is perhaps his life was shortened a bit. The program wasn't executed as ideally as it would have been. And so I see a future because of Bitcoin that, projects of the sort may be sustained and forevermore.
Now
It's a
mentioning
mouthful, bro. Sorry.
No, it's good. It's good. You touched upon something that reminded me of something I want to touch upon, which is, talking about these other projects in the blockchain space in a decentralized manner. Since I've known you, in the beginning, when I known you in 2017, you were pretty big Bitcoin maxing. But now
I still am.
even still. But now we have a lot of projects, a lot of new projects have come on, and we see Ethereum taking, 20% of the entire crypto market cap. Are you still in that maxi camp? What do you think about that narrative, and where are you now?
Happy to talk about that. So where I am in that is, there are some unignorable technologies that without a doubt have space. And I say this in that, culturally, the revolution in NFTs and in emerging artists and the different ways that they can control contracts through smart contracts and all these things. I'd like to ultimately see that stuff built on a Bitcoin network, but there are just projects that are too big to necessarily stop. But because I'm a proponent of the immutability, I like the scarcity of Bitcoin. I like the fact that it is decentralized, true in its truest form. I am a maxi in that I find that is the least risk in terms of your investment. And so for me, as a conservative, fiscally responsible, and also just having conviction in the things that I believe. Yes, there are more opportunities for greater gains. Yes, there's going to be, Bitcoin's market cap's going to get eaten by something, and then something else is going to go back into it. It's sort of always in flux. But I always try to tell people, like, if you're not always trying to just catch that wave without too much risk, just make sure you're in Bitcoin. And if you're going to play the game, at least insure yourself by putting your profits in Bitcoin. So I'm still a maxi. in hopes. I hope that, again, that Bitcoin's technology is such that everything gets built on the network, and I think that it still will be. I still think that it's early. I like, dude. It's the fact that it's decentralized and everything is done a consensus based. It fortifies the project so much. It just makes it so much stronger, and it's just so secure. So I go with the low risk in this case. Maybe in the future it changes a bit. I see the value of third parties. I don't think I don't know that you can wholly exist without some level of third parties. So that's just something that you have to compromise at some point, I imagine. But currently, if I'm going to lead someone or direct someone towards anything, I will always and exclusively endorse Bitcoin.
Yeah, and that makes sense. I mean, there's still a lot of, it's the most liquid. It's the most liquid digital asset. It's one of the most scarce. It's got the most hash rate. And actually, I think we're seeing hash rate coming to all-time highs or nearing the all-time high mark since the big dip of the China or the Cheng.
It's tried and tested, man. It's fortified, tried and tested. It just is, right?
Yeah. And there's a lot of stuff happening now in this bull market, right? We were both around for the end of 2017 bull market, and one of the interesting things to me is the Staples Center being bought out with the biggest name acquisition of, like, what was it, $700 million for crypto.com, and I think that's going live on Christmas. Like, I'm ready to buy some crow. Like, I don't know. Like, I see Matt Damon, he's like their spokesman. I see him on TikTok. I'm seeing commercials. And I went to the website yesterday.
Do you remember the Ellen interview? The Ellen interview with when Ashton Kutcher decided to go on there and shill XRP. Do you remember that at all?
I saw a clip. I didn't see the full thing.
Okay, that's a lot of years ago, but I'm just saying, where is XRP today? I don't know. Yep. I'm just saying, something to consider. When they say history doesn't necessarily repeat itself, but I think it rhymes or whatever it is that the saying is. Yeah. I think what we're looking at is a lot of enthusiasm in certain spaces, and it's reason for caution. I think it is reason for caution because too much enthusiasm in the crypto space, as you and I have come to know, and dude, it's tried and tested. You can feel it in your bones. The day I started buying Ether is when one of the first Bitcoin rug pulls of this bull run started. So I'm just like, what was it? So I looked at my sentiment. Suddenly I started buying altcoins. I started looking at altcoins, and I even texted you. I'm just like, bro, like on the dime, I'm buying altcoins, and Bitcoin goes for like a 30 point correction. So you're like, okay, 30% correction. So, you can almost start to feel the familiarity of the enthusiasm in the space. Just the unfortunate part right now is that it's at a cross section with of manipulated financial world where there's just not a lot of faith right now, and not enough people are considering perhaps Bitcoin as, because people are looking at Bitcoin in spots of time. And this is a thing that I try to tell people that are, where they say, well, look how much this coin has gone against Bitcoin in this span of time. You're like, okay, but you haven't zoomed out entirely. Like, Bitcoin's been around the longest, so you can pick and choose certain spots where Bitcoin is being outperformed by certain alts. But again, if you don't catch that sort of the flippenings that's sort of happening here and there, the brief moments of near flippenings. I mean, I had a fear last year that Doge was going to take over, and Spandy had to laugh at me, bro. Just laugh at me. And I'm like, okay. And he wasn't wrong. So, not a lot of people do enough homework about market cap and how many coins are held by who, and, the incentive structure of people shilling coins and then holding on to their coins and then selling bags to others. Just too many examples of that out there. It's just not that with Bitcoin, with as much as the wealth is being distributed and there's many wallets that are coming up, and the fact that at this point to be considered, if you've got 3 Bitcoin today, you're top 5% holder. If you've got 3.5, you're a top 1% holder on the planet. I mean, this is the greatest opportunity in humanity for a transfer of wealth. I'm all in. I can't be dissuaded. I just can't at this point. I guess I'm a maxi.
So where do you see Bitcoin then for the future? Is it in your mind the next world reserve currency, or what is the ultimate goal of Bitcoin in your mind?
Honestly, I think whereas it's romantic to say something like, oh, we're all going to be rich on Bitcoin, buy Bitcoin, become rich, this and that. I think the war that Bitcoin has ahead of it is it's a significant one. I think it's going to win them all. Sorry. Can you still see me? Can you still see me?
Yeah, you went off for a second.
Yeah, sorry. I didn't realize. I got an incoming call. I've never even known that was possible during Zoom calls. I hope it doesn't happen again. Anyways, I think that it's going to win all the wars. I don't know that in our lifetime necessarily we will see the declared victory, in form of hey, world reserve currency, all of the property asset, is now a 700 trillion or whatever it is. I don't know that in our lifetime we'll see that, but what we will see is it will be a sound technological protocol and savings device and means of exchange, I believe, in certain places. I mean, it's going to need some more finessing, but I do believe that I do believe it has multiple use cases that serves multiple purposes for multiple different people and circumstances. So world reserve currency, maybe. I mean, it makes the most sense that it would. Mm-hmm. But it's going to take some time for that to happen. And frankly, I see a lot of scary, destructive ways that would be. I see that too fast an implementation of that could be just so destructive. I think there's part of that in it. So it really is a slow, steady grind. And that's the way that it should be.
Right. Well, and in terms of that and its growing popularity and growing market capitalization, I mean, Bitcoin's already in the top 10 market capitalizations of everything, gold being number 1. And Ethereum's even number 13 or 15th or something. So it's pretty wild to see cryptocurrency in general take over. And yeah, the flippening, I think about the flippening too. There's so much that relies on Ethereum network now, right? And it's interesting to see it play out. And newer technology, they say, well, and is Bitcoin included, is being just adopted quicker than previous technology, so it happens quicker. Whereas internet users coming online, we're seeing wallet users come online. There's definitely a parallel in that aspect.
So let me ask you a question. Let me ask you a question quickly. Can there be a better version of Bitcoin? And then against that, and to the backdrop of, can there be a better version of Ethereum?
Well, that's a very good question. That favors, I think, the maximalist point of view of Bitcoin, because Bitcoin doesn't have any competitors when it comes to the longest blockchain. It will always have the longest blockchain. There's nothing you can do about that. And the biggest network. And it's such a new technology. People just want the most liquid one because they want to be fiscally conservative. And all the big money, the Michael Saylors of the world, they want to be the most liquid, which is the safest asset, which is Bitcoin. But Ethereum second. The Ethereum second, and it's growing, and decentralized applications are growing. But like you said, competitors, can it be replaced? We've seen the rise of Solana this year, and I've been tempted to chase myself. It's gone from what,
Same.
$1 or $5 to 200 or more, probably a little bit dipped now with the rest of the market. However,
Is there
Ethereum,
Algorand? Is that another one? Algorand, is that not another one that's looking to replace the likes of the technological like of Solana and whatnot? NFT sort of host. If I'm not mistaken, I thought Algorand was one, but I don't want to start dropping too many coins. But I know that there are competitors. The bottom line is, so with the future, or at least the point that I'm trying to make is, with the future, and as you stress that, you know, technological adoption of the sort and improvements and this and that is, that's where at the end of the day, and you look at how can Bitcoin become more decentralized or more immutable or more secure? I don't know that the answer is yes. The other ones, the answer is, and that's where I tend to just be like, well, if patience is a virtue, then I'll hold on in the hopes that ultimately the world itself wakes up to the value of decentralization and then just entirely builds everything on one network. And I only say so because I think that it is possible. I think it is possible. It's just a question of, again, and I don't have to look at 2017 and say how many coins existed then that don't today. And so you start to wonder how many of those today that have significant market caps might be subject to the same sort of risk, given that they are technological things that still can be improved on, right?
And over the years, if you look at the top 10 in coin market market capitalization, I mean, it's always different coins except Bitcoin. Bitcoin's always number one. So like you, and people that listen to my show, they know.
Points. These are good
people
points.
Know. I tell them, buy Bitcoin first. You know, if you're going to buy another cryptocurrency, you should probably go with Ethereum. Go with your blue chips. Learn how it works. There's so much to know in this space, as you know. It's overwhelming, right?
Even the prospect of diversification in the space is new. Who's to know what is the proper diversification schedule? Who's to know anything of the sort? Because, you know, there probably is a more effective diversification for maximum profitability in, you know, outside of 100% any coin. I mean, obviously. Because the space is still so new, there just aren't enough people saying, well, the proper allocation should be this much, and then this much in this, and then this in blue chips, and then you know, move on this. You know, when you meet this much profit, you turn it to, you know, there just isn't a tried tested system yet. But I think that when it comes in the future with management and you know, with the ETFs and everything else coming on, I think we're going to start seeing more sort of diversified portfolio being perhaps the norm moving forward. So it's still a new enough space that it's a question of what is tried, what is tested, and we know Bitcoin and Ether and at least Litecoin at this point are sort of still prevalent, but we know that there's also a ever-changing rotating door. So
absolutely
in and out, right?
Yeah. It comes a point though, like when a market capitalization gets so big, like when I see billions of dollars, like I just start thinking like this coin's been tested. Although then you see something like Shiba that's multi-billion-dollar market cap, which I'm still not convinced is going to be around in a couple of years. And it's crazy, you know, some of the same people that we know, they come to me and they don't ask me how to get into Bitcoin. They don't ask me how to get into Ethereum. They say, where can I buy Shiba? Where can I buy Shiba and Doge? Shiba and Doge are the two coins they're looking for.
I can't even believe it. I can't even believe it. And you know, it's indicative of a far too a saturated market of ambition, too much ambition. And so it's still, you know what this is? This is that FOMO, and this is a level of greed that started with your legacy financial investing opportunities. So it looks like stock buying. I was like, hey, this is the hot tip. Hey, this, and then there's this feverish thing that follows. So everyone wants to purport to know the most, especially all the new people in the space. And there comes a level of humbling that comes with that. No one knows what it means to hold someone else's bag. Everyone wants to jump on when something's already picked up 50 and 60% gains, and then they jump on. Well, dude, there's a lot of hurt out there to be had. There's a lot of blood to be spilled, and it's all going to happen. And, you know, I just wish that these people would realize that. Dip your toe in the space, okay? Dip your toe, buy some Bitcoin. If that in and of itself doesn't freak you out, then really you should really not be buying SHIB. You should not be buying ADA. Like, what are you venturing into here? I mean, I know when I bought Bitcoin, I was, you know, and I held Bitcoin for the most part as at a loss, but my conviction never changed, and I just continued to buy, right? And that's what needs to happen. I don't know that the same can be said about some of these altcoins, and it does scare me when people show up with all this enthusiasm because A, they don't know a lot about the space, myself the least out of anyone, and the fact that they purport to know most about it is familiar to me. I've seen and remember what's become of a lot of people that used to think that they knew everything about fucking crypto, and today they don't have any.
When you see the word crypto expert, run.
When you see the name NFT artist, run.
Let's talk about what you were talking to me about. I think one of the last times I saw it in the office, your whales saving whales. What is it? How did you come up with this idea? And what's the goal of the project?
So it's still early in inception. It's a concept, but everything is at some point. But I was approached and with another enthusiast who did not love my Bitcoin maximalism. And so we had a lot of conversations, but he's the one that brought to me the important aspects of how culturally the NFT spaces and the likes are really important. And so he turned me on to the concept of the cultural benefits and the technological benefits. Of course, I understand what NFTs are, and I like, you know what I mean, verifiability. I can sit there and tell you, here's a Wayne Gretzky rookie card, here's the real one, here's the fake one. We can get through all what makes something real, what doesn't, and give it value. So it's simple. But what I was turned on to was the idea that, in some of these spaces, the NFT art has a great deal of value in both holding and selling, or you've got these Dutch auctions that are going off right now. Right now I'm working with these guys that's called the Based Walrus collection. They're looking to launch, and they're looking to benefit my legal defense fund by raising 5 Ether and donating 5 Ethers once all the art is minted. So they're just looking at just bringing enough attention to the project and likes and this and that. And so in talking to him, I thought, well, and I touched on this earlier, in the spirit of what became of Keiko, and not that I'm calling it a failure, but in that today there isn't any money to continue that program, which would otherwise could conceivably be releasing other whales, I thought, rather than see a future where we're still reliant on evaporating money. So, some pro-animal charities rely on donations exclusively. Well, those donations have to stay consistent for year after year after year. They have to grow year after year after year. And much of the people putting in the work and trying to get the money themselves have to be paid and accordingly get wage increases. And there's a lot of power and politics behind all this stuff. So I've seen sort of the failures or the what's missing, and I think that decentralized charity endeavors are the future. And so what I'm hoping is Whale Save Whales is sort of the that's the website, and that's the name of the project. We've got logos and the likes, and we're developing this website, and the concept is we want to accrue a bunch of digital assets, be it cryptocurrency, so be it Bitcoin as a reserve currency, be it NFT art, something we can hold that accrues with value over time, something we can sell, be the beneficiary of, in the hopes that some of the art that is being sold might accrue in value, so people are incentivized to actually grow this reserve currency. And the idea is that a lot of animal organizations will come out and say, hey, we want to do this thing, and they say, we want to do this, and we hope to have it done in 4 or 5 years. And so people send a whole bunch of money to them, and they try to get it done, and then they don't. And they say, well, we're still trying, but it's going to take 3 more years. And then they try, and then it doesn't quite get there. And then at the 10th year, maybe everything quiets down, maybe it fails, maybe it has enough funding for a bit, maybe they've attracted enough millionaires and billionaires, but again, it's just an unsustainable model, frankly, especially given the world today. And so what I'm seeing is, in all of the 10-year projects that have failed, is it conceivable that accruing enough digital assets over the course of many years, could it be such that we can accrue enough of a reserve currency that the appreciation of that currency is able to fund and in perpetuity projects without the risk of losing having the bottom ripped out from you? And so this is the idea. And so again, with this new emerging technologies, smart contracts and art and artists and celebrities, and the fact that I do have the benefit of speaking with a lot of people of influence that do sort of, I see a future where a project of the sort might fund all the charities. And maybe through a verified program, charities apply for certain projects, and maybe through the hub, people who are donating to both the reserve currency and or direct to the recipients of the charities can actually see transparently where the money is funding. Perhaps they can actually direct and allocate specific monies to specific applications for money. Maybe there's a whale sanctuary that wants to be built that needs a $5 million fence. And then maybe people say, we want to pay for that fence. So they pay the fence. They actually put the money in that, but they don't necessarily want to pay the wages of the people that are begging for the money. It's like, no, we don't want to pay for your lunches and vacation. We just want to make sure that there's a fence at that sanctuary. So I see a future where transparency is key. And I see one where decentralized takes the power and politics out of things. A lot of charities are incentivized to take their time in developing projects because that's job security. We have to take that out of charities. And so I just see a viable, I see a future where decentralized support, much like in how I've been supported, will fund all charities, including the wages of the people working for them. But then with an incentive structure, smart contract is such that projects will be able to attract the best people and offer actual contracts through consensus, that there could actually be like a consensus based entire sort of incentive structure and really effective a system to operate charities with.
Well, I think the idea is definitely has that reoccurring theme of transparency, decentralization, and that's kind of where the world's going. People want to see where their money's going, even when it comes to like your regular taxes. Oh, my carbon tax was going to actually the green initiative, or where's my money going? It just gets a lot. The problem is a lot of places just pool the money together and
exactly,
we're going to pay some wages, we're going to pay for this, and at the end of the day, sorry, that project didn't get finished. So I think it's a really good idea. Yep,
we tried, but we failed.
And then you wasted money.
And you say to yourself, that's evaporated. That's exactly what it is. It's evaporated resources. So what I'm proposing is that we sit on the resources. And I do believe that there's such at some point, some algorithm that can be made through AI that ensures that the reserve currency is always making even so much as 1% more that it's spitting out. It's just so much that is sustainable so that it is just forever more sustainable, and maybe so big that we create damn well utopian societies for some of these retired animals. I mean, what would be better than a citadel next to a whale sanctuary, next to a Bitcoin farm, next to a marijuana farm? So I just see so much opportunity where I think that if we attract the right minds, and I think the Bitcoin and the crypto community are such that they're like-minded people. They love freedom. And I think whales freeing whales saving whales, I just think on brand and on point. This is the proper community to make this thing happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And people that adopt the cryptocurrency, the community is very likely and enthusiastic to get behind, right, when they see these decentralized projects. So and that's something I getting people, like I was telling you, I was getting more people involved with my podcast to help me out now, but I want people that are going to come in on this revolution with me and want to join the decentralization aspect. And getting back to the MAXI stuff, like Bitcoin really went from 0 to 1, right? Like it's so revolutionary that Ethereum's a bit different where you can build applications, but it's not like that couldn't be done with Bitcoin, right? So there's definitely some parallels there, and it's in line with the decent. So where are you in this idea? Is this idea?
Or just idea.
Talking?
We're idea. The unfortunate part is taking the idea and then turning it into a concept is such that I need for it to be airtight. It's not just something that I suddenly want to start accepting monies for if it's something that is not entirely secure, isn't entirely trusted, isn't entirely like structurally sound. And so I'm doing due diligence to make sure that we're not a tragic story in the end, because you hear about, DAO projects of the sort that are getting robbed and DeFi breaches where suddenly there's evaporated wealth or missing wealth. I just want to ensure moving forward that that everything is such that it is damn near perfect, and that and I also want to commit to it. The other thing that I should stress in all of it is that whereas I'm trying to work with developers now in the initial stages, the ultimate goal would be that this thing be run entirely without any third parties, entirely AI, and entirely released as a decentralized artificial intelligence that manages itself largely. That's the concept. And so for me, it's still a little bit too much for me to grasp technologically. So I'm still trying to surround myself with a proper team and bring, again, just enough attention to it that it might attract enough people, but without bringing too much enthusiasm to it, because I also don't want to, I don't want to come out too strong and then fail somehow in some, so I'm just taking my time.
Yeah. No, definitely. You got to approach things properly and, trustless, right? You want it to be
trustless,
just like Bitcoin, where people don't
verify,
have to,
baby.
Yeah, people don't have to rely on Phil. They just rely on the network to take care of everything. They can deposit their cryptos and donate towards whatever sanctuary they want to.
Yep.
And they can see that money being spent as it gets spent, if it gets spent, right?
That's right. And I also see, I see being able to donate any form of crypto. I mean, I see being able to donate cash itself. Sure. I mean, who's to say no? All I'm hoping for at the end of the day is a sustainable system. And so because I'm looking long, I got a lot of years ahead of me. What's 30 years? If if in the past 10 years we've not created the sanctuaries despite multiple efforts for whales, then why don't we try a new concept? So in 10 years, we will not have looked at the past 10 years as a failure, and we will still have we will still be sitting on something to work with. So for me, it is about asset acquisition. And that's a strange one, because you're like, hey, everybody, let's make this robot rich and then let's save whales, but let's make sure the robot is super rich first. So I'm trying to wrap my mind around how to explain conceptually how this is to both, I don't want to use the term layman minds, but like the normies, where I'm just like, yeah, give me money, I'm going to turn it to Bitcoin, and I'm not going to give it to any charities for a long time. And then eventually the interest will pay for it. They'll be like, what? And I'll be like, okay. So I'm surrounding myself with the proper people, and the time will be right. I tried to time it so that the feverish pitch of the Q4 parabolicness was going to be such that we would benefit from a lot of the charitable sentiments out there. But I don't know that that's necessarily the case. That, the industry's a bit cold, so I don't know that I want to necessarily be parting people with their crypto exactly right now. Maybe let's wait till people accrue more and have a little more confidence in the space, so that they can, part with it and whatnot. But I do think this is fail-proof. I think with a long view, I think this and with the proper people guiding this thing, I think it's fail-proof.
Yeah. And just talking about that, the Q4 and what everyone's expecting, the Santa rally. Where do you see us in the crypto market right now? Are we done? Are we seeing our tops? Have we seen our bottoms?
No, I like the idea of lengthening cycles. I think there's enough evidence to show it. I think it makes sense. I think it's reasonable to think that timelines change. I mean, we're looking now at waves of money necessary for inflow that is to the magnitude that is just huge. Like without the institutional adoption at this point, retail is just, I don't know that it's going to be enough. Now, granted, banking the unbanked, we know that there's a large percentage population out there. We know that, because Bitcoin is divisible, eventually Satoshis will become the unit of measure and of the sort. We just got to get big first. Yeah. But I do see where, I'll tell you what, I'll say we've made it when everybody says that Satoshi is the sexiest crypto the Satoshis are the new sexiest crypto to invest in, and Satoshis are going to $1. And the day that Satoshis are going to $1 and everyone wants Satoshis instead of Doge and Satoshis and everything else, we will be at that point, that will be the hyper adoption we'll be looking for. That'll be the moment. Once people start speaking of Satoshis or bits or whatever is the adopted term for the divisible units of Bitcoin, I think that once we start referring to Bitcoin as that's the point of no return. And I think that's the point of no return for any other altcoins out there as well. I think that's the day where that cute little, I don't know what they're going to use, maybe they use a little dinosaur, maybe they use a little birdie or something. It's just like, Satoshis, like, I love this Satoshi. It's cuter than SHIB. It's cuter than SHIB, dude. What? Cuter? Yes, cuter than that coin. Boom. Bye.
Yeah. And to me, that sounds like government and institutions completely adopting Bitcoin and taking Bitcoin as number one and on their balance sheet, right? And maybe even hash wars that you see like Max Kaiser talking about, right? Where
it's almost like an arms race, bro. Think about it. If you look at it as an arms race, because frankly, it kind of is one. It's only, rather than arming yourself to empower an army, for instance, or like a technological war like thing, you're empowering yourself with the power of scarcity. You want the biggest piece. Getting the biggest piece is what's going to give you the power. And the only way to do that is buy it. So it is a race. There's no question about it. It's just a question of who's doing it right now secretly, who has intentions of doing, are people trying to find the way to expedite purchases? I mean, look, Michael Saylor's found a way to buy in inordinate amounts of money. But, when you start talking about reserve currencies of countries and stuff, I mean, that's going to take a lot of convincing and a lot of very technologically sound technology to push a button and convert that level and volume of cash. But is it coming? I got to say this, it becomes conflicting when you start to think like, okay, so a government such as the US or such as anyone for that matter, just they warm up the printer and they print money at will. And, you think of what Bitcoin is. And so it sort of messes my mind that Bitcoin does actually have an infinite ceiling for value, because so long as money continues to print, Bitcoin conceivably can be the only thing that goes up in value, because the more money you put into property, the more money you put in anything, it technically it dissolves it, right? It makes it less valuable, right? Or the opposite can be said, but it just needs too much money. But with Bitcoin specifically, I think that is the perfect example of what will require too much money to one day actually acquire. And I say this to the form of as an example of accruing one single solitary Bitcoin, right? It's just going to be at some point. You wonder if countries aren't just going to print their own money to buy Bitcoin, to print money to buy Bitcoin, to print money to buy Bitcoin. And you just wonder if we're not driving ourselves into a further mess if people don't, if they're not responsible in that adoption. Because Bitcoin has a value. We're trying to apply an underlying value, but so long as you keep pumping fake money into it, how can that value actually pump up? This is what's intrinsic about it to me, is like, is there intrinsic value to the tune of that cannot actually be measured in actual dollars, because at some point the dollar has to lose its relevance whatsoever in this relationship. It has to die. Mm-hmm. It's the only way this works. Because otherwise it's just going to keep piling in. It's just not going to work. It actually has to pile itself in until it loses all of its gas. Frankly, it's almost like if you looked at the Venezuelan dollars right now, how much would it take to put into, and at what point does the government just run out of the ability to actually print it? Right? Because at some point you just can't. Mm-hmm. So I'm looking forward to what that sort of balance looks like when all of this thing goes to an almost level of deranged lunacy in terms of trying to convert your, be it reserve currency or your monies into it. Like, what the hell becomes it? That's the day I'll be like, whoa, I told you so.
Hyper Bitcoinization.
That's the one. That's the word I was looking for, dude. Well, it's scary, but it's a fascinating thought. But to touch on what you said earlier, it is the greatest hope. It is what gives me the greatest hope, mm-hmm. both in the way that it's going to influence charities and the future as a whole. Like, mm-hmm. I love it, dude. I wake up every day and it's the first thing I check. People mm-hmm. check the weather. I check the price of Bitcoin.
Absolutely. I'm very much in the same boat when it comes to having hope. Like, before I got into Bitcoin, I very much followed world news and politics, and now it's like I don't even want to waste my time, because I feel like Bitcoin is such hope, and it's going to solve so many of our problems and so much of the income inequality. Like, you're really speaking my language right now, Phil.
Dude, and it's just so exciting. But you're right. You've decided to opt out of the lunacy of legacy industry, being media, being government, being cash, you've chosen to opt out, and there's nothing more exciting than the future when you already know what the alternative is.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I got a few fun questions to kind of wrap things up with here tonight, Phil. You work with animals for so long. If you were an animal, which animal would you be and why?
I probably only came up with this answer a week ago, because for the third or fourth time in my life, I saw a bald eagle, American bald eagle, fly over my house. Mm-hmm. And it flew up and down the river. So I've got a river here, and I saw it soar the length of it. Twice it's happened. I've seen it in my life. I saw it just last week. I spend a lot of time staring out my window. The entire environment changes when an eagle flies by. The entire environment, everything becomes quieter. Everyone, all the ducks hit the water, all the geese hit the water. There's everything. And so that level, I want that feeling when I'm flying over something, knowing that I'm largely untouchable and I just do what I want in any weather, in any climate. And then that eagle is just a resilient thing. So I've always wanted to fly. I know what it's like to be underwater. I want to go up there now.
Yeah, man. They paid you what? Minimum wage to swim with orcas, man. That fact will always stick with me. And I saw it again in the documentary, making minimum wage swimming with orcas, and
$6.85 an hour.
That's
$6.85
that's
after 8 hours. Do the math. How much after 8 hours? I'm coming home with like $60 and I have to take the taxes off. I'm coming home with $50 a day. I think I was taking home $400 every 2 weeks, 400 and change.
Yeah, and you see their capabilities when you watch a documentary like Blackfish, where they're pulling them down to the bottom. Like, they're such smart creatures. They know what they're doing.
I'm happy to speak to you of the times that I've been in the water with an aggressive orca, and I can tell you that, not to suggest I've had my life at risk. Of course, I did every time I entered the water, but there were times that were far more riskier than not. And I was that stupid cowboy who believed I could just survive anything and jumped right in anyways. But I've got stories. I mean,
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, we can, and I'm going to link some of your links here in the show notes for this podcast. And I know you've talked a lot about them on some of the podcasts, but today I really wanted to dive into your crypto and your Bitcoin part of your life, because I know you, and I know it's a big part of what's in your head, what's going on in your head, but I don't always see it. I don't always see that reflect online, because you said, you have a different brand and you're,
for the time being, but I think what you'll see is an evolution at some point, probably entirely, because I see a marriage between the two. I just see a marriage between the two. And I think that what eventually what the world will recognize me more so for will be what becomes the opportunity Bitcoin presents, for both in the projects that I have in mind and for the transparency and of the way the charities work in the future. So yeah, I think you're going to see a gradual change, but you're going to see more. I had laser eyes for a bit, and I had Bitcoin in my bio, but only for a bit. Right.
Now, Twitter has been indispensable for you, right? Like, it helps you get onto Joe Rogan and other podcasts. We've seen Jack Dorsey step down from the platform. Do you see Twitter as still a main hub? Is it going to be a main hub? Where do you spend most of your social media time?
So definitely, Twitter is my sword. Like, it's my greatest weapon. There's no question. Slowly but surely, I've sort of gravitated towards Instagram, a little bit more content. I had BlackBerry for the longest time, and the consequence of that was I wasn't able to get on Instagram for a lot of time. Right. And another example of what happens when you've got too much centralization in third parties and whatnot. So. I do think that with Jack gone, I am curious to see what he builds on the Bitcoin network. I think that when it comes to credibility and incentive structure, I think that you should be able to be with verifiability, know who your sources are, pay for your sources are, have access to every source, and I think that expanse in the decentralized world is ultimately what will take over with social media. I don't know what it is. Will it be a different version of Twitter? I don't think so. I think Twitter's it's just like anything else, right? It trades on the stock market. It's got a different incentive structure than freedom, and so I still think at the end of the day everything will be decentralized. So I wish Twitter the best. It's my favorite place to go. I have the most fun on it, but nothing lasts forever.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And like we were saying earlier, technologies come quicker, right? The newest one comes quicker and it takes over quicker. Now, you've been on, like you said, you've been on Joe Rogan 5 times. You've been on many notable podcasts. They made a documentary about you. So what's next for Phil Demers? Is there a book in your future? Is there another documentary and maybe a podcast?
I would say definitely a book that comes, but then there just has to be a few more chapters to sort of bridges to cross. Some big ones very soon. So that is something I do choose I do look forward to endeavoring myself to doing. I do got to find my voice, and right now mine it sometimes is too angry still. So I do want to cross a few bridges where I'm able to have a little greater level of introspection, maybe humility. But yes, in that I do have a lot of passion for this project moving forward. I think that I am gonna, if the future allows for my time, to be able to allot to this thing, I do wholly want to endeavor myself to it, because I do really passionately believe in it, and I do want to get into the Bitcoin space, and I think it's a proper avenue for me. So I don't know, man. I still think that I want to free whales, and so I speak to you of a dream. What is it? Do I think becomes? I don't know. Definitely a podcast, though. In the media space and social media space, I've been sort of typecast, if you will, or even just so emphatically on point and brand, rather, that I haven't allowed myself to maybe break out of certain chambers, like the animal rights chamber and this and that. Mm-hmm. And so, albeit that I've had the benefit of being on multiple podcasts in different worlds, or even sports podcasts and crypto podcasts and Joe's, but I do want to not necessarily reinvent myself, but go in a different direction a little bit. I want to find. I need projects. I always have. And this, it turns out, has been my biggest. I do look forward to maybe diversifying into multiple other projects, maybe something that brings me more joy than necessarily that costs me so much of my peace. Maybe something that provides me with more peace than takes from it. That would be nice.
What are the best resources for other people that, I don't know, maybe follow you, but kind of want to get a little bit deeper into animal activism and support that initiative?
So of late, the thing that I've been telling people is, look local. Sometimes people have these big, ambitious ideas of how they can change the world or help. And often it comes in the form of, be it donating money, resources, time. They always want to go big. And what I would stress to them, especially in this recent climate, is look local instead. There's a lot of people that are fostering animals, or they're rescuing wildlife, and they don't have these glamorous wages. They're people in these really small places. They're not glamorous expanses, but they have a lot of overhead, and they have a lot of things. So, instead of glamorizing animal rights and making it something that is about dressing sexy with a sign and spraying blood on people, or like find a way to do something to help the people at the bottom, the people that are truly, they don't have their stories told. And you only have to look local. You don't have to look far, and they're everywhere. So what I tell people is, start slow, start small, and see how long you can hack it. Because if rescuing a few cats or putting some food in a dog's belly, proves to be too much for you, then you're not gonna stomach trying to save whales, dude. That's it. I just tell people, look local, and then do your due diligence, do your work. Just make sure that where the money's going is somewhere that you can sleep at night knowing that you haven't just enriched someone else's lifestyle and taken away from yours. Make sure the money's going to animals.
Phil, you're an intelligent guy. You've spoken to a lot of interesting people. Do you have any favorite?
Not according
quotes?
to Marineland.
Well, fuck Marineland.
Hey, there it is.
Do you have any favorite quotes or words of wisdom?
I said it the other day, and it stuck with me, and it was my own quote, and I'm gonna say it now. And it might not feel as poignant to you in the moment, but at the moment I was live on Instagram, and every single person was just like, yeah, yes. And what I was speaking to the idea, the romantic idea of what it means to fight for animals. Everyone's got this concept that it's this great lifestyle and this cool idea, and much criticism comes with that. A lot of people will build you up to break you down and this and that. But what I was doing was touching on the idea that, whereas I'm known for a thing that I do have a regular life. I have a regular life. And so my quote was, look, guys, beyond all this craziness, I have a regular life. I mean, I just bought a cardigan. So that's my quote. Look, man, I got a crazy life, but I got a regular life. I bought a cardigan. That's my quote, man. Buy cardigans. Don't forget, in your crazy worlds, that still just continue to go to the store, buy yourself a cardigan.
Yeah, well, and then hey, that's a grander theme of,
Exactly.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's just a fun one. It's just a fun one.
Yeah, for sure. Is there anything that we haven't talked about that we should, or if not, maybe you can tell us where to follow you and support you, Phil?
I mean, I'll offer my all my contacts here. You can follow me, of course, on Twitter, Walrus Whisperer, one word. On Instagram, Walrus Whisperer, there's a small underscore. But if you search Phil Demers, it's easy to find me. Facebook, you can follow me there, but at some point I'm going to burn that thing up like an inferno, and I can't wait. So just don't waste your time too much. TikTok, I'm only just recently delving into. It's interesting. It's fun. It's also poisonous. I've only just delved into it. I look forward to maybe never again, but it's proved invaluable. And so I have to do what I have to do. Beyond that, no, man, that's it. I just say, I do say stay tuned, because, we are rounding the corner of what will prove to be the most exciting time in Marineland's sort of dismembering.
Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to it, Phil. Me, I have a strong compassion for animals. Huge hope with Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, super passionate about that. So I resonate a lot with you and a lot with what you say. Love talking to you, Phil. I'm going to thank you for coming on. You've spoken to me for over an hour now, so I really appreciate your time, Phil. Thanks for coming on, man.
Dude, my pleasure, man. It's always a pleasure to speak with like-minded, and especially to meet like-minded people. So crossing paths with you, and between you and I, you've given me some pretty invaluable advice that has actually caused for some very beneficial ripples in the animal rights world with the allocation of my time. So I thank you with some foresight in helping guide me and being a better animal advocate as well.
Well, I'm honored to hear that. I encourage everyone to go watch your documentary, the Phil Demers, the Walrus Whisperer here. Thanks again for coming on to episode 55 of the Halving Report, Phil.
Awesome, man. Cheers.
Thank you all for listening to the Halving Report podcast. Please like and subscribe to the show, share it with a friend, check out our show notes below for more about our guests and some sweet crypto coupons, and we'll see you back next time.